In this video, I'll be coming at you with some of the most overlooked, underestimated weapons in the game. What's good, folks? It's Warframe here with a new Warframe video coming at you with unique weapons in Warframe that have a gimmick or features that make them quite fun to play with, but also do a lot of damage. These are some of the weapons that are either never spoken about or showcased once with a particular loadout and forgotten, and people only remember that one loadout. I like to see these weapons as amazing alternatives to some builds or new additions to your arsenal. These aren't ranked from worst to best, but more like, hey, did you know about this? And if you did know about the power or use these weapons, comment down below and tell me about your favorite loadout to run with these weapons. But hey, let's be honest, there's always going to be that one cringe lord in the comments talking about how DE is going to nerf their favorite weapon, or the weapon is going to get too popular that their Riven disposition goes down. You know those guys! Anyway, let's start off with the Quanta Vandal. It's a long-range beam weapon that deals electric damage. I've showcased this on a video where I took it against level cap enemies, and also it does have a longer beam than the Amprex. Really fast application of electric procs and very simple to use. It does have a lower magazine base damage and crit chance when compared to the Amprex, but the beam reaches out to 50 meters without sinister reach. The Quanta does have an alternate fire that shoots out a slow-moving projectile that you can detonate and deal blast damage. The alternate fire has lower crit chance with a 15-meter explosion radius that doesn't go through walls and consumes 10 rounds, mostly used for low-level content, but you can combine the primary and alternate fire for even more damage. All the builds are going to be very simple, straightforward. They're not going to be using base damage mods because the base damage arcanes exist. The Quanta Vandal build has Deadhead because electric is an instantaneous DOT that ticks instantly without a delay, so it can benefit a lot from primary Deadhead, unlike other DOTs with a delay. Here's a simple viral and electric build. We have unranked elemental mods because we did not want them to overpower our main damage source, which is electric, and the rest of the mods are pretty straightforward. The Panthera Prime. Now this is an odd one. It is both a projectile slash machine and a slash beam weapon. The primary fire is a projectile that has a small explosion radius and then ricochets to hit another surface or target. You can aim at the floor to kill enemies around you or shoot enemies directly in front of you to bounce and ricochet projectiles off of them to spread to nearby enemies. The primary fire is the one that eats up the most ammo. The alternate fire, however, is a slash beam that hovers and only consumes ammo when it hits enemies. Pretty good, you know, kind of like the Convectrix with the Efficiency Beam Augment. Yeah. Slower fire rate, but a lot more concentrated damage. It reaches out to 8 meters, quite small, you know? So it does need sinister reach. It has an augment called Disarming Purity, but as you can see in game, it doesn't show much info. Nice work, DE, by the way. But it basically just disarms enemies with a small percentage. At max rank, it hits 40% chance to disarm enemies. Yeah, so useless mod. This is a purely slash alternate fire Panthera build. All you have to do is put Vigilante Supplies in the Exilus, and we're using Merciless here instead of Deadhead because it is slash, so there is a delay. However, if you want this to be a more universal build, just switch out Sinister Reach to the Exilus slot and mod these two slots here for viral. Remember, low rank viral because we want our slash damage to be our main damage source, so it has a higher chance to proc over the viral. Viral is just there as a debuff, not our main damage source. The Muriel Cernos. This weapon is a powerhouse of a bow, but requires one thing to make it shine: a grouping ability. What, did you think I was going to say a Riven? The reason being is that it spawns toxin clouds on contact hits, and these toxin damage clouds scale off your weapon's base damage, toxin elemental mods, faction mods, and multi-shot. And the radius also scales off blast radius mods. Oh yeah, pretty nasty, right? Also, did I forget to mention that these toxin clouds combine with your modded elements, and yet still deal toxin damage over time? Nasty, right? So you have one cold mod to make viral and toxin, or relive the good old days when gas was broken and use a heat mod to have gas and spawn toxin clouds. And another great thing about this weapon is that you don't need to fully charge your shots to deal damage. Just quick tap to release the arrows, and you can do this without any fire rate mods or arcanes. Hey, just don't mind the arcane acceleration pop up there. I swear, try it. Trustmebro.org. No, it actually does work. Legit. The Muriel Cernos. Very straightforward yet again. However, we're not using galvanized chamber here. Instead, we're using split flights because this is a awesome multi-shot mod for bows, and you get even more multi-shot. One elemental mod to form a viral, and we're still getting toxin damage. Hunter munitions to bleed out enemies, so we get viral, hunter munitions, and toxin DOTs. Crit chance with the 2 crit chance mods and more crit damage. It's all about multiplying your damage. We're going to be hitting yellow to orange crits thanks to the vigilante mods. If you want a bit more consistency with crits, I highly suggest running an Arcane Avenger setup. The Cost Assist. This is a funny melee that looks like Snake Fangs and functions the same? Okay, let me explain. Essentially what you're doing is, when you heavy attack, you blow your load on enemies. Listen, I know it sounds weird, but you shoot out a corrosive splooge that reaches out 30 meters with a girth of 5 meters. Damn, that's big. And this splooge that touches the enemies staggers them and has them vulnerable to finishers and stealth multiplier damage. That is impressive. This splooge has infinite punch through. Damn, it can go on forever. And doesn't scale with range mods. See that? It doesn't need a pump. Since it doesn't have great crits, you don't bother modding for it, and go with an elemental loadout. I mean, if you still want to build for crits, you can always run Arcane Avenger and even put Sacrificial Steel. Simple, yet devastating. With the Cost Assist, pretty straightforward build. We have our base damage, Corrupt Charge for that initial combo, and we modded it for Viral. This will splooge out Corrosive and Viral. And because this is a Scythe, we're going to get Force/procs on that heavy attack. Very, very juicy. And finally, onto our Spores Thick. That's exactly how you pronounce it. If anyone tells you otherwise, they're wrong and they don't know what they're talking about. So the Spores Thick is a sniper with the highest status chance of all snipers, and the 3rd highest status chance in all primaries. And oh yeah, well, let's not forget to mention that it has 1% crit chance. And no, I did not stutter. But yet, it has a fat crit multiplier of 3 times! A slap to the face to some might say, but no! This is where arcanes like Avenger come into play. And frames like Citrine and Harrow also might help. You know, or Zephyr if you like floating around with a lot of damage. And pretty much build around that. It deals IPS damage, Slash being its primary one, and when you shoot enemies, it has a delayed explosion that bursts out in viral damage and procs viral. So you're pretty much having your own primer and slashing enemies without even modding for it. You can run Prime Firestorms to work more with the explosions, but it feels better to just group up enemies and kill them in one clump. No crit chance mods, but we are going to utilize Avenger or other forms of crit chance multipliers. Since we're not going to be focusing too much on crits on the build, we don't need to put Hunter Munitions, and instead go with Fang Fusillade. Group up enemies and bleed them to death. Alright folks, this has been it from me. I hope you've enjoyed this weird accumulation of weapons that you probably use or never even heard of, but definitely do try out. It does take a little investment for some, but you will enjoy them. Anyway, for those who enjoyed the video, please feel free to leave a like, share, and subscribe for more Warframe content, streams, and so much more. Do refer to the description. Thanks for watching, and as always, a peace.